Hey guys, tonight we dive into the brutal reality of pyramid building in ancient Egypt, from backbreaking labor under the scorching sun to the daily struggle for survival. This story is harrowing yet fascinating, a defining moment in human architectural achievement built on the broken bodies of countless workers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what you think about pyramid construction. Could modern humans endure such conditions? Now, let's begin. You find yourself in the fertile fields along the Nile River, approximately 4,500 years ago. The air is thick with humidity, carrying the earthy scent of rich soil and the distant fragrance of flowering lotus. Your hands are calloused from years of agricultural work, skin bronzed by the relentless Egyptian sun. This morning began like any other. You rose before dawn, ate a simple meal of bread and perhaps some dried fish, and prepared to tend to your crops. But today is different. As the golden light of morning spreads across the fields, you notice a small group approaching your village. Their appearance sends a ripple of tension through the community. Officials from the royal court, accompanied by scribes and armed guards, have come with purpose. You've heard whispers of this moment, stories passed between villages, warnings that eventually reached even the most remote settlements along the Nile. The pharaoh's representatives have arrived, and they are collecting men for the great work. You watch as the village elders gather to meet these officials. Papyrus scrolls are unfurled, inscribed with hieroglyphics that few in your village can read. The head scribe, his voice carrying across the gathering crowd, announces that by decree of the divine pharaoh, the living Horus, son of Ra, your village must provide 20 able-bodied men for service in the construction of the eternal house of the god-king. This is not a request. It is a command from the divine ruler himself. Perhaps you feel your stomach tighten with dread. Perhaps you glance toward your family's modest mud-brick home, where your wife still sleeps with your young children. Perhaps you consider running, escaping into the marshes that border the great river. But where would you go? The pharaoh's reach extends throughout the two lands, from the delta to the first cataract, and the punishment for defying the god-kings command would surely be worse than whatever awaits at the construction site. The selection process begins. The officials move through the crowd, examining men for their strength and health. They are not looking for skilled craftsmen, not yet. The first wave of recruitment seeks only strong backs, sturdy legs, and resilient bodies. The scribe makes notes on his papyrus as each man is assessed, calculating how many more are needed to fulfill the village's quota. You feel a hand on your shoulder. An official has singled you out, nodding approvingly at your farmer's physique. Developed through years of agricultural labor, the scribe makes another mark on his papyrus. You have been chosen. There is little time for goodbyes. The officials are efficient, moving from village to village along the Nile to gather the workforce needed for the pharaoh's monument. You are permitted only moments to return to your home, to embrace your family, to gather a few meager possessions, a spare linen kilt, perhaps a copper amulet for protection, a small wooden carving of Toret to ensure your safe return. Your wife presses into your hands a small cloth bundle containing dried bread, some dates, a dried fish wrapped in linen. Her eyes are wet with tears she tries to hide. Both of you know the stories of men who never returned from the great building projects. But both of you also know that to refuse the pharaoh's call is unthinkable. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, you find yourself walking away from everything you've known, joined by other men from your village and neighboring settlements. Some walk in stunned silence, others whisper about what might await you. A few of the older men, who participated in smaller construction projects in years past, share ominous warnings about the conditions you'll face. The journey to the construction site takes several days. You travel mostly by foot, though occasionally barges transport larger groups along the Nile. Each night, you sleep under the vast Egyptian sky, stars wheeling overhead, the same stars that have guided your people for thousands of years. You wonder if the pharaoh, in his quest for immortality, hopes to join those eternal lights. As you travel, the landscape gradually changes. The lush greenery of the Nile Valley gives way to the harsh line where fertile black land meets red land, the unforgiving desert. And then, on the horizon, you see it for the first time, the massive construction site sprawling across the desert plateau. Even from a distance, the scale is beyond anything you could have imagined. Thousands of men swarm like ants across the site. Partially completed structures rise from the earth, Ramps of packed earth and mud brick extend upward at seemingly impossible angles. The sound reaches you even before you arrive. A constant, rhythmic percussion of stone on stone, punctuated by shouts, creaking wooden sledges, and the crack of overseers' whips. Upon arrival, you and the other new recruits are processed with the same efficiency that marked your selection. Scribes record your names, villages of origin, and assign you to work units. You're given a wooden tag to wear around your neck, marked with symbols indicating your work assignment and ration allocation. The smell is the next thing that hits you. Thousands of bodies laboring. Under the desert sun, the smoke from cooking. Fires, the distinct odor of the workers' latrines. It's overwhelming at first. This concentrated humanity gathered in service to the pharaoh's immortality. You're led to a vast area of simple shelters, rows upon rows of long, narrow structures, built of mud brick and reed mats. This will be your home for, well, no one can say exactly how long. Years, certainly, perhaps decades. The older workers are the newcomers with a mixture of pity and resignation. They were once like you, freshly arrived, still unbroken by the daily toil that awaits. That first night, lying on a reed mat in a crowded shelter. Sleep eludes you despite your exhaustion from the journey. Around you, men snore, whisper, occasionally cry out in their sleep. Outside, torches cast flickering shadows as guards patrol the workers' village in the distance. The partially constructed pyramid looms against the night sky, a darker shadow. Against the darkness, tomorrow, you will join the great work. Tomorrow, you will begin to understand why being a pyramid builder in ancient Egypt truly sucked in ways you cannot yet imagine. As you finally drift toward an uneasy sleep, you wonder what became of the men from your village who were recruited in previous years. Are they still here, somewhere among the thousands of workers? Did they survive the brutal conditions? Or do their bones lie buried in the simple graves that you glimpsed on the edge of the workers' village? And as the distant sound of stone being dragged across and continues even through the night, you realize that you have entered a world where time is measured not in seasons of planting and harvest, but in the slow, agonizing rise of the pharaohs. Eternal monument, one stone block at a time. The stars continue their eternal journey across the night sky, indifferent to the momentous human effort unfolding below. Tomorrow, as the first light of Ra touches the eastern horizon, you will rise to take your place in this massive enterprise. Tomorrow, you will begin to understand the true meaning of sacrifice in service to the god King Dot, and as you finally surrender to sleep, the weight of what awaits presses down on you like the massive limestone blocks that you will soon be hauling across the scorching desert sand. Part 2. Daily life in the workers' villages. The first hint of dawn breaks across the eastern horizon. You're jolted awake not by the gentle sounds of village life you've known, but by the harsh, rhythmic beating of a wooden mallet against a hollow log. The sound reverberates through the workers' village, impossible to ignore, designed specifically to rouse even the most exhausted laborers from their brief respite of sleep. You sit up on your reed mat, your back already stiff from the unyielding ground beneath, and take in your surroundings in the dim morning light. The sleeping quarters are cramped and Spartan, long, narrow structures housing dozens of men, arranged side by side with barely enough space to roll over without touching your neighbor. The air is thick with the mingled scents of unwashed bodies, dust, and the lingering smoke from last night's cooking fires. Around you, other workers are stirring reluctantly. Some mutter quiet prayers to Thoth or Gnum, asking for strength to endure another day. Others massage aching muscles, wincing as they stretch limbs still sore from yesterday's labors. A few remain motionless, perhaps clinging to those final, precious moments of sleep, or perhaps too exhausted to respond to the wake-up call with any urgency. The floor beneath your reed mat is packed earth, swept clean, but permanently infused with dust that rises in small clouds with every movement. The walls of the structure are simple mud brick, constructed hastily but efficiently by earlier generations of workers. Small openings near the ceiling provide minimal ventilation, though they do little to disperse the heat that will build throughout the day. Your personal space consists of the reed mat you sleep on and a small area beside it where you keep your few possessions. Perhaps you have a wooden box or a woven basket containing a spare linen kilt, a small copper knife, a wooden comb, maybe a simple game board etched into a flat stone with pebbles for playing pieces. Some workers keep small amulets of protection, figures of bees or Tauret, deities who might offer some spiritual defense against the many hazards of pyramid construction. You notice that the more established workers have created small touches of comfort in their spaces, a better quality headrest carved from wood, rather than the standard issue stone ones, perhaps a woven mat from home, or small trinkets that remind them of the families they left behind. These veteran builders guard these possessions carefully, as theft is not uncommon in the crowded conditions of the workers' village. The second sounding of the wooden mallet drives away any lingering drowsiness. It's time to begin the daily routine that will become as familiar to you as breathing over the coming years. First comes the morning ablution, a brief, utilitarian affair at the communal washing area. A series of shallow stone basins filled with water carried from the Nile allow workers to rinse their faces and hands. The water is already silty and used by the time you arrive, but it's better than nothing. Some men clean their teeth with frayed reed brushes and natron powder, a luxury brought from home that will eventually run out. The latrine facilities are similarly basic, long trenches dug at the outskirts of the village, partially screened by reed mats for minimal privacy. The smell is overwhelming, especially in the heat, and the constant battle against flies seems futile. Disease spreads easily in these conditions, and dysentery is a common affliction among the workers. You've already noticed that some men return from these trenches looking pale and weak, their bodies depleted by persistent illness. After washing, you join the line forming at the ration distribution point. Scribes with papyrus scrolls check wooden identity tags and mark each worker's allocation. The food is simple but substantial. You receive your daily ration of bread, the staple that will provide most of your calories for the backbreaking work. Ahead, the bread is coarse, made from emmer wheat ground between stones, often containing bits of sand that will gradually wear down your teeth over years of consumption. To supplement the bread, there's a portion of vegetables, perhaps onions, garlic, or beans, and occasionally dried fish. The more skilled workers and overseers receive better rations, including more frequent portions of meat, usually beef from oxen that have outlived their usefulness as draft animals. Brewers within the village produce a thick, nutritious beer that provides both hydration and additional calories. It's weaker than the beer served at festivals in your village, but it helps to make the monotonous diet somewhat more palatable. You find a spot to sit and eat your morning meal, perhaps joining others from your home village for a brief moment of familiar companionship. Conversation is subdued in these early hours, focused mainly on the work assignments for the day and complaints about various bodily pains. Veterans share warnings with newcomers about particularly harsh overseers or dangerous work areas to avoid, if possible. After eating, you notice some workers visiting the small shrine at the center of the village. It's dedicated primarily to Ta, patron deity of craftsmen, though images of other gods are present as well. Nun the creator, Hathor the protector, Thoth the measurer. Some men leave small offerings, a bit of bread, a flower plucked from the rare patches of vegetation, a carefully shaped pebble. They whisper prayers for protection, for strength, for eventual return to their families. The more desperate pray simply to survive another day. As the sun climbs higher, the full population of the workers' village becomes visible. You're struck by the hierarchical organization that mirrors Egyptian society as a whole. At the top are the skilled craftsmen, stonemasons, carpenters, engineers, who enjoy better housing at the edges of the village, often with small individual dwellings rather than the communal barracks. Their clothing is of finer quality, and they carry themselves with the confidence of men who possess irreplaceable knowledge. Below them are the specialized workers with specific training, the rope makers, tool sharpeners, water carriers, and those who operate the wooden sledges for moving stone. They occupy an intermediate status, housed in slightly less crowded conditions than the mass of unskilled laborers. And then there are the thousands like you, conscripted farmers and laborers, whose primary qualification is physical strength and endurance. You form the base of the pyramid in the social hierarchy, just as you will provide the raw muscle power to build its physical counterpart. Beyond the main workforce, you observe the support population that keeps the entire operation functioning, bakers working in long rows of bread molds, brewers tending to large pottery vats of fermenting beer, cooks stirring enormous cauldrons, launderers beating garments clean at stone washing stations, potters creating the vessels needed for daily life, and healers tending to the inevitable injuries in reed-covered treatment areas. Women are present in the village, though fewer in number than men. Most work in food preparation, textile production, and other support roles. Some are the wives of skilled craftsmen who have been permitted to accompany their husbands, Children, too, can be seen running errands, carrying water, or helping with simple tasks. Their presence lends a strange sense of normalcy to this otherwise extraordinary settlement. Constructed for a single, monumental purpose, the village has its own internal economy. Workers with specialized skills trade their services. A carpenter might repair a broken headrest in exchange for extra food rations. A scribe might write a letter to a laborer's family in return for a small trinket from home. Some workers have even established small side businesses selling amulets, simple wooden games, or other small comforts to supplement their official rations. As the second meal of the day is being prepared by the village bakers and cooks. You have a brief period to attend to personal matters. Some men use this time to wash their single spare kilt, hanging it to dry in the hot sun while wearing their other one. Others visit the village barbers, who shave heads and faces with copper razors to combat lice and the oppressive heat. A few sit in small groups, playing Senate or other board games on makeshift playing surfaces scratched into the dirt. Medical attention is available, though primitive by any standard. The healing house is a slightly larger structure where injured workers receive treatment from practitioners using a combination of practical knowledge and spiritual techniques. You observe men with bandaged limbs, poultices of herbs applied to infections, and splints fashioning broken bones. The healers use honey for its antibacterial properties, willow bark for pain, and various herbs whose properties have been known since time immemorial for more serious injuries or illnesses. Incantations to the goddess segment are recited, and protective amulets are provided. The most severely injured or ill are segregated in a separate area. You avoid looking too closely at this space, but it's impossible not to notice the moans of pain or the distinctive smell of festering wounds. Not everyone who enters the healing house emerges alive. As midday approaches, the village gradually empties as workers are called to their various assignments. The skilled craftsmen leave first, carrying specialized tools in leather pouches or wooden boxes. Next go the semi-skilled workers, and finally, the mass of laborers like yourself, moving in large groups toward the construction site. Before departing, you glance back at the workers' village, this strange, temporary city that houses thousands, but exists solely to create a monument for one man's journey to the afterlife. The irony isn't lost on you that while building the pharaoh's eternal house of perfect stone, you exist in impermanent shelters of mud, brick, and reed, structures that would crumble back to earth within a generation if abandoned. The village will be your world for years to come, the place where you eat, sleep, receive medical care, worship, and forge new social bonds to replace the family connection severed by your conscription. Within its confines, a unique society has formed with its own customs, hierarchies, and rhythms, all organized around a single overwhelming purpose. As you turn to join your work gang, the harsh call of an overseer's voice reminds you that the village, with all its discomforts and limitations, will soon seem like a sanctuary compared to what awaits you under the merciless sun. At the construction site, at least here, in the workers' village, there are moments of rest, flickers of community, and the simple relief of shade. The limestone plateau beckons, gleaming white in the distance, and with each step toward it, the relative comforts of the workers' village recede behind you. Ahead lies the true test of your endurance, the brutal morning routine that will push your body to its limits and beyond. The transition from the workers' village to the construction site marks the beginning of what will surely be the most physically demanding day of your life, until tomorrow, which will be equally brutal, as will the day after and the day after that, stretching into a seemingly endless future of toil and exhaustion. You walk with your assigned work gang, a group of about 20 men with whom your fate is now inextricably linked. Some are from your village, familiar faces that provide a small comfort. Others are strangers from distant settlements along the Nile, speaking with slightly different accents, invoking local deities you barely recognize. Despite these differences, a wordless bond is already forming. You will depend on these men for your survival in the coming hours, just as they will depend on you. The eastern sky continues to brighten, painting the desert landscape in hues of amber and gold. In these early morning hours, before its full strength bears down upon the land, there is an almost ethereal beauty to the construction site. The partially completed pyramid catches the first rays of sunlight, its limestone casing blocks gleaming like a beacon. The sight is momentarily breathtaking, a brief reminder of the divine purpose that supposedly justifies the suffering you're about to endure. This moment of appreciation vanishes quickly as you reach the tool distribution area. Long wooden racks hold the implements of your labor, copper chisels for the skilled stone workers, wooden mallets, ropes of twisted papyrus fiber, wooden levers and rollers, baskets for carrying rubble, and stone picks for the quarry workers. The tools are basic but effective, refined through generations of Egyptian construction projects. You're handed a simple copper digging tool with a wooden handle worn smooth by countless palms before yours. The handle is already slick with the morning dew, a concerning sign of how it will feel later when soaked with sweat. The copper blade shows signs of having been repeatedly resharpened, making it slightly concave from years of use. This tool will be your constant companion, an extension of your arms for the long day ahead. Before work begins in earnest, your gang gathers with others for the morning rituals. An overseer, distinguished by his superior linen kilt and wooden staff of authority, calls for silence. A priest, his shaved head gleaming in the early light, steps forward to perform abbreviated versions of the daily temple rituals. He makes offerings to Ra for a safe day of work, to Ptah for the success of the building project, and to Horus, in whose earthly incarnation, the pharaoh, you all serve. The ritual complete, a senior official reads from a papyrus scroll, reminding workers of their sacred duty and the divine nature of their task. The words wash over you, speaking of eternity, of Mat, the fundamental order and balance of the universe, and of the necessity of the pharaoh's tomb for the continued prosperity of Egypt. Some workers listen with genuine reverence, others with resigned indifference. You wonder how many truly believe that their suffering serves a cosmic purpose, and how many simply endure because they have no choice. Now comes the division of labor for the day. Scribes consult their papyri, calling out names and assignments. The skilled craftsmen are directed to their specialized tasks: fine cutting and fitting of casing stones, carving of specific architectural elements, supervision of critical alignment work. The semi-skilled workers receive their assignments. Next, rope teams, sledge operators, ramp maintenance crews dive finally. The mass of general laborers like yourself receive the simplest but most physically demanding tasks. Today, your gang is assigned a quarry duty, extracting limestone blocks from the nearby quarry that provides much of the internal filling for the pyramid. Other gangs are directed to hauling teams, water distribution, or debris clearing. The walk to the quarry takes nearly half an hour, following a well-worn path that countless feet have trodden before yours. As you walk, the overseer of your gang, a hard-faced man with a perpetual squint from years in the sun, barks out instructions and warnings. His wooden staff taps an impatient rhythm against his leg as he walks, a constant reminder of the punishment it can deliver for those who lag or complain. Keep your water rations until midday, he advises, not unkindly. The new men always drink too early, then suffer worse in the afternoon heat. This small piece of practical wisdom is appreciated, though the implicit warning about the afternoon condition sends a flutter of anxiety through your stomach. You arrive at the quarry just as the sun fully clears the horizon. The quarry is a vast, terraced scar in the limestone plateau, with various teams working at different levels. The sound is overwhelming, the rhythmic tapping of copper against stone, the crack of wooden mallets, the grunts of exertion, and the constant shouted instructions between work gangs. Your team is directed to a section where a large limestone seam is being worked. The technique has been perfected over generations. Workers chisel narrow channels into the stone to outline a block of standard size, then insert wooden wedges into these cuts. The wedges are soaked with water, causing the wood to expand and create pressure that eventually splits the block from the bedrock. Your position at the start of this process, tasked with chiseling the initial guide channels. The work requires both strength and precision. Too much force and the channel crumbles. Too little and progress is painfully slow. You watch a veteran worker demonstrate the proper technique, the muscles in his arms and back moving with practiced efficiency. Before attempting it yourself, your first strikes are awkward, drawing a derisive snort from the overseer. But gradually, you find a rhythm. Position the chisel, strike with the mallet, clear the dust, move slightly forward, repeat. The limestone dust fills your nostrils, coats your throat, and stings your eyes. It settles on your skin, mixing with sweat to form a paste that feels like a second skin. The sun climbs higher, and the temperature rises with alarming speed. By mid-morning, the quarry has become an oven, the limestone surfaces reflecting heat back at the workers from all directions. Your muscles, unaccustomed to this specific type of labor, begin to protest. First comes the burning sensation, then the deep ache, and finally the trembling that threatens the precision needed for the task. Water is distributed sparingly. A team of young boys circulates through the quarry carrying large pottery jars, doling out precious mouthfuls to parched workers. When they reach your gang, you receive your ration in a shared wooden cup, barely enough to wet your throat before it's passed to the next man. You recall the overseer's advice and take only a small sip, saving the rest for when the heat becomes truly unbearable. Time stretches in the quarry. There are no hourglasses or water clocks here, only the movement of the sun across the sky to mark the passage of time. Work continues without significant breaks, the pace dictated by the overseers, who themselves answer to higher officials. Concerned only with quotas of blocks produced each day. As the morning progresses, you witness the first injuries. A man 2 positions away from you strikes his chisel, which glances off the stone and slices into his thigh. Blood blooms quickly on his linen kilt as others rush to help him. The wound is bound with a strip of cloth, and remarkably, the man is expected to continue working after a brief rest. Only injuries that completely incapacitate a worker merit removal from the site. Another common hazard becomes apparent when a block being pried loose suddenly shifts unexpectedly, crushing the foot of a worker who wasn't quick enough to move away. His screams echo through the quarry, momentarily causing work to pause before the rhythm resumes, now punctuated by the injured man's moans as he's carried to the edge of the work area. To await transport back to the village healers, you learn quickly to be constantly aware of your surroundings, the positioning of your fellow workers, the stability of partially cut blocks, the condition of your tools. A moment's inattention can result in injury or death, and the dead receive only the most basic funerary preparations before being interred in the simple cemetery at the edge of the workers' village. By late morning, your hands have developed their first blisters, which burst painfully and then continue to rub against the wooden handle of your tool. Your lower back throbs from the constant bending and straightening. Your knees ache from kneeling on the hard stone. Your shoulders burn from the repetitive motion of swinging the mallet. Every part of your body registers its protest against this unaccustomed labor. Yet all around you, the veteran workers continue with a sort of resigned endurance that you find both inspiring and terrifying. Their bodies bear the marks of years at this work, unusually developed shoulder and arm muscles, callous hands as tough as leather, permanently bent postures, and various healed injuries that left their marks in scars and the salon limbs. One older worker near you has a horribly twisted left arm, broken years ago and improperly healed. Another is missing 3 fingers on his right hand. A third walks with a pronounced limp from a crushed foot similar to the injury you witnessed earlier. These men are walking testimonies to the physical cost of building the pharaoh's eternal resting place. As midday approaches, a different rhythm emerges from the constant percussion of construction. Food is being delivered to the site, the second meal of the day, carried in large baskets by teams of servants from the workers' village. The overseers call for a brief pause, the only substantial rest period in the long workday. Workers gather in whatever small patches of shade they can find beneath partially constructed walls, beside large uncut stone blocks, under improvised awnings of reed mats at the quarry edge. The rations are distributed quickly: more bread, some dried fish, perhaps onions or garlic, and blessed water, slightly cooler from being stored in porous clay containers. You find a spot to sit, your legs gratefully yielding to gravity. The bread is dry and the fish salty, increasing your thirst, but you force yourself to eat slowly, knowing you need every bit of energy for the afternoon ahead. Around you, conversation is minimal. Some men use this precious respite to actually sleep, their exhaustion so complete that they can find unconsciousness even on the hard stone. Under the brutal sun, others attend to their body's needs, retying the bindings on blistered hands, massaging cramped muscles, treating minor cuts with saliva believed to have healing properties, or, for the fortunate few, small amounts of honey carried from the village. A few mumble prayers or touch amulets hanging around their necks, seeking divine strength for the coming hours. You observe an interesting social phenomenon during this brief respite. Despite the rigid hierarchy that governs all aspects of Egyptian life, here in the quarry, a different kind of respect has emerged, one based on endurance, skill, and willingness to share one's strength with the team. The most respected men are not necessarily those of higher social standing, but those who work hardest, complain least, and help their fellow workers when strength begins to fail. One such man sits near you, older than most, with a body hardened by decades of labor. Without speaking, he notices your blistered hands and offers a small pot of ointment, a mixture of animal fat and herbs that provides some relief when applied to your raw skin. This small act of kindness from a man who has nothing to gain by helping a newcomer who might not survive the first month touches you deeply. Save some strength, he advises quietly. The afternoon is twice as long as the morning. His eyes, surrounded by deep creases from years of squinting in the sun, hold a weary wisdom. You nod in gratitude, both for the ointment and the counsel. All too soon, the meal break ends. The overseer's calls echo across the quarry, summoning workers back to their positions. With legs protesting and back stiffening after even this brief rest, you rise and return to your assigned section. The indentation of your morning's work seems pitifully small compared to what the veteran workers have accomplished. As you position your chisel to resume work, you glance up at the distant shape of the pyramid rising against the harsh blue sky. From this angle, you can see teams of haulers dragging massive blocks up the earthen ramps that spiral around the growing structure. The distant figures appear tiny against the monumental stonework, like ants building a mountain one grain of sand at a time. In that moment, the true scale of the project hits you with physical force. The quarry where you work will eventually provide thousands of blocks, each requiring hours of backbreaking labor to extract. Those blocks must then be hauled to the construction site, lifted into position and fitted with precision, and this is happening simultaneously at multiple quarries with multiple teams, all focused on creating a perfect final form that most of the workers will never live to see completed. The afternoon stretches before you like an endless desert, the sun now, at its zenith, beating down with merciless intensity. Your brief rest already feels like a distant memory as your muscles scream back to life. With the first strikes of your mallet, the limestone dust, momentarily settled during the meal break, rises again in choking clouds that coat your sweat-drenched body, and yet, you continue. What choice do you have? To work is to survive. To potentially return someday to your family and fields. To falter is to face punishment, reduce rations, or worse. And so you find reserves of strength you didn't know you possessed, falling into the hypnotic rhythm of the work. Position, strike, clear, move, repeat, as the brutal morning routine gives way to the even more punishing afternoon labors that await. As the merciless afternoon sun beats down upon the quarry, you begin to understand why the veteran worker cautioned you that afternoons feel twice as long as mornings. The relentless heat has transformed the work site into something resembling the duat, the Egyptian underworld, except instead of facing judgment from Osiris, you face the constant scrutiny of overseers demanding ever more productivity from bodies already pushed to their limits. During these brutal afternoon hours that the true physical toll of pyramid building reveals itself in excruciating detail. The human body, even one conditioned by years of agricultural labor, was never designed to endure such systematic strain. Yet here, thousands of bodies are treated as mere tools, expendable components in service to the pharaoh's immortality. Your hands are the first to surrender to the abuse. The morning blisters have long since burst, leaving raw flesh exposed to the coarse wooden handle of your mallet. Each impact sends shockwaves of pain up your arms. The ointment provided by the kind veteran worker has long since worn away, and blood now mingles with sweat, creating a slick, sticky grip that makes precise strikes increasingly difficult. By day's end, your palms will be cross-hatched with lacerations that will partially heal overnight, only to be reopened tomorrow. Next comes the assault on your joints. The human wrist was not meant to absorb thousands of impact vibrations in a single day. A dull ache begins at the joint, gradually intensifying until each strike of the mallet feels like a personal blow to the delicate bones. The elbows soon follow, protesting the constant extension and contraction. The shoulders, bearing the full force of each downswing, develop a deep, burning sensation that eventually radiates across your upper back like fire spreading through dried reeds. Your spine becomes a column of agony. The quarrying position, bent forward at the waist, sometimes kneeling, sometimes crouching, places enormous pressure on the lower vertebrae. The discs between these bones, cushioning structures, never seen by human eyes, but acutely felt when damaged, begin to compress under the constant strain. Veterans of the quarry can be identified by their distinctive stoop posture, their spines permanently altered by years of this unnatural positioning. Your knees, pressed against unyielding limestone for hours, develop a unique type of pain. First sharp and localized, then spreading and throbbing. The thin linen of your kilt offers minimal protection against the rough stone surface. Small cuts and abrasions accumulate on your knees and shins, each a minor injury on its own, but collectively contributing to your body's growing chorus of distress. The respiratory system suffers its own distinct abuse, each strike of chisel against limestone releases microscopic particles that hang in the still desert air. You inhale this dust with every breath, the particles settling deep in your lungs. The immediate effect is a constant irritation, a dry cough that afflicts almost all quarry workers. The long-term consequence, visible in the oldest laborers, is a permanent shortness of breath, their lungs gradually scarred and stiffened by years of dust inhalation. As the afternoon progresses, you observe the full spectrum of injuries common to pyramid construction. A man working on the level above you loses his footing on the dusty surface and falls, landing awkwardly on his side. The sharp crack of breaking ribs is audible even amid the constant percussion of the quarry. His pain gasps as he tries to breathe send a wave of sympathetic winces through nearby workers. Another laborer, working the lever cut block free, screams suddenly as the heavy stone shifts unexpectedly, pinning his hand against the quarry wall. The crushed fingers may never regain their full function, assuming they don't become infected, a common outcome that frequently leads to primitive amputations performed with heated copper blades and searing oils to cauterize the wound. Hernias are so common they barely merit comment. The strain of lifting weights far beyond what the human body is designed to bear causes the abdominal wall to tear, allowing internal organs to push through the muscle tissue. You notice several older workers with distinctive bulges at their groin or abdomen, painful protrusions they simply bind with cloth and endure, as there is no effective treatment. Dehydration presents its own constellation of symptoms, many of which you're now experiencing firsthand. Your mouth and throat filled lined with sand, your tongue swollen and dry. Your urine, when you manage to step away briefly to relieve yourself, has darkened to an alarming amber color. Headaches pulse behind your eyes, intensifying with each heartbeat. Some workers around you display more severe signs: confusion, stumbling movements, slurred speech, harbingers of heat stroke that can kill if not addressed. The water boys make fewer rounds in the afternoon as the water supply itself diminishes under the desert heat. Each precious mouthful is savored, held in the mouth before swallowing to maximize the sensation of relief. You watch with sympathy as one young water carrier stumbles, spilling half his jar's contents onto the thirsty limestone. The boy's face contorts in terror, knowing those deprived of their water ration may direct their frustration toward him. The constant exposure to sun exacts its own price. Your skin, already darkened from a lifetime working in agricultural fields, burns in a different way under the direct desert sun. By evening, your shoulders and back will feel tight, hot to the touch, adding another layer of discomfort to your exhausted body. Over time, the skin of longtime pyramid builders takes on a leathery texture, prematurely aged and permanently damaged by years of solar assault. Beyond these immediate physical effects lies another dimension of suffering, the cumulative damage that manifests over months and years. You notice it in the oldest workers, men perhaps only in their 30s, but with bodies that appear decades older. Their movements are stiff and cautious, their faces permanently etched with lines of pain and exhaustion. They are walking testimonies to the true cost of the pharaoh's monument. One such veteran pauses near your position, carrying a load of wooden wedges to another section of the quarry. His gait is uneven, favoring his right leg. His left shoulder hangs slightly lower than his right, the joint visibly deformed. 3 fingers on his left hand are permanently bent, unable to straighten due to years of gripping tools. Yet he continues, working, his body adapted to its limitations, finding ways to remain useful enough to justify his rations. The copper tools themselves contribute to the physical toll. Unlike modern steel, copper is relatively soft and deforms with use, requiring frequent resharpening. This malleability means the tools transmit more vibration into the hands and arms, contributing to joint damage. Additionally, repeated contact with copper and the other metals sometimes used in construction, primarily bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, leaves many workers with chronically green-tinged skin, where the metal contacts their flesh, sometimes leading to persistent rashes or sores. As the day grinds on, you become intimately acquainted with exhaustion in its purest form. This is not the pleasant tiredness that follows a productive day in the fields. the kind that promises deep, restorative sleep. This is systematic depletion. Muscle screaming for relief that doesn't come, joints begging for rest that can't be granted. A mind increasingly foggy from pain and fatigue yet required to maintain focus to avoid dangerous mistakes. Midway through this afternoon, an overseer approaches your section. He observes your work silently for several minutes, his expression unreadable beneath the linen cloth that shields his head from the sun. Finally, he speaks, his voice neither kind nor cruel, simply matter of fact. Adjust your grip. You're wearing yourself out too quickly. He demonstrates a subtle change in how to hold the mallet and position your body, a technique developed through generations of Egyptian construction projects. The work doesn't get easier, he explains, but you can make your body last longer. This practical advice, devoid of sympathy but genuinely helpful, reflects the utilitarian attitude toward human bodies in this massive enterprise. They are resources to be managed efficiently, their longevity a matter of practical concern, rather than compassionate consideration. During a brief pause as your section waits for haulers to remove a cut block, you observe the remarkable engineering that surrounds you, contrasting sharply with the primitive medical care available to those who build it. The Egyptians possess sophisticated knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and structural principles, enabling them to create monuments of astonishing precision and durability. Yet their understanding of human anatomy and medicine remains largely mystical, offering little effective relief for the injuries inherent to construction. The healers in the workers' village rely primarily on a combination of practical experience and religious practices. For muscle strains and joint pain, the most common complaints, they apply poultices of cooling herbs or heated stones to draw out the perceived bad humors. Broken bones are set with varying degrees of skill, then immobilized with linen. Bandages stiffen with gum or resin. Open wounds are cleaned with wine or beer, which, unknown to the Egyptians, has some antiseptic properties, then sealed with honey and bound with fresh linen. For internal ailments, the mysterious pains that develop in the chest or abdomen after years of strain, the healers have little to offer beyond pain-dulling concoctions of poppy, mandrake, or cannabis mixed with beer or wine. These provide temporary relief but do nothing to address the underlying damage. Prayer and magical incantations often constitute the primary treatment for conditions beyond external comprehension. The most feared ailment among pyramid workers is not an acute injury, but a slow, creeping condition that affects many long-term quarry workers. It begins with a persistent cough that gradually worsens, accompanied by increasingly labored breathing. The Egyptian healers call it stone lung or quarry chest, attributing it to evil spirits residing in the limestone dust. In reality, it's the progressive scarring of lung tissue from years of dust inhalation, silently suffocating its victims from within. Your own body now catalogs a comprehensive inventory of pain, each area contributing its unique complaint to the collective protest. Your hands burn and sting from open blisters and cuts. Your wrists and elbows throb with dull persistence. Your shoulders and upper back feel as though they're being compressed in a stone press. Your lower back sends sharp warnings with each movement. Your knees ache from constant pressure against stone. Your feet, crammed into simple reed sandals inadequate for the rough terrain, have developed their own collection of blisters and abrasions. Yet perhaps the most insidious aspect of this physical toll is how quickly it becomes normalized. You observe how the veteran workers have adapted to constant pain, incorporating it into their existence as an expected condition of life. They have developed an extraordinary tolerance, working through injuries that would incapacitate those unaccustomed to such hardship. This capacity for endurance, while remarkable, comes at the cost of sensitivity, both physical and, eventually, emotional. As the sun finally begins its descent toward the western horizon, the quality of light changes, bathing the quarry in golden hues that belie the suffering contained within it. The day's work begins to wind down, though not due to any particular concern for the workers' well-being. Rather, practical considerations dictate the schedule. Continuing past dusk would require torches and increase the risk of accidents, reducing overall efficiency. The overseers call for the final tasks of the day: securing partially cut blocks, storing tools properly, clearing debris that might cause hazards tomorrow. These closing duties feel almost insurmountable to your exhausted body, yet they must be completed before you can return to the workers' village. As you gather your strength for the long walk back, you notice something unexpected. Despite the extreme conditions, despite the injuries witnessed and experienced, There's a current of quiet pride among many of the workers. They look back at the day's progress, blocks cut, moved, and prepared for transport with a certain satisfaction. Even in the midst of suffering, the human capacity to find meaning in creation, intangible accomplishment, asserts itself. An older worker stands near you, surveying the quarry as the golden light fades. "We are building for eternity," he says, not to you specifically, but as a reflection spoken aloud. "Long after our bones are dust, this monument will stand." There's no bitterness in his voice, only a kind of resigned wonder at participating in something that will outlast not just him, but countless generations to come. As you begin the trudge back to the workers' village, your body moving on automatic pilot while cataloging its many injuries, you ponder this paradox. The monument to immortality built by bodies all too conscious of their mortality, their fragility highlighted with every strain and break and tear. The physical toll is not just in the immediate pain, but in the gradual, systematic wearing down of human bodies in service to an ideal of permanence they themselves will never attain. Tomorrow, your body will tell the story of today's labor in a language of pain, muscles so stiff they resist movement, joints that creak and pop with each step, hands that can barely grip a water cup. Yet tomorrow you will return to the quarry, as will all those able to walk, to continue the work. The great stone tomb rises in the distance, indifferent to the flesh and bone sacrificed in its creation, and as the workers' village comes into view, promising meager comforts after the day's ordeal, you realize that the physical toll of pyramid building isn't just measured in injuries and ailments. It's measured in transformed bodies, strengthened in some ways, broken in others, but all irrevocably changed by their participation in this monumental task. Just as the workers shape the stone shapes them, grinding away everything that is not essential to the labor until they become, in their way, monuments themselves to human endurance. The question that haunts your fading consciousness as exhaustion overtakes you is whether this transformation, this sacrifice of bodies to create a single perfect eternal body for the pharaoh, is a fair exchange. But such philosophical musings dissolve as more immediate concerns take hold. Finding food, tending to your wounds, and surrendering to the oblivion of sleep before the cycle begins again. Under tomorrow's scorching sun, the concept of time changes. When you work under the Egyptian sun, minutes stretch into eternities. Yet somehow entire days vanish like water droplets on hot stone. You've been at the construction site for what might be weeks or months now. The days have blurred together in a haze of heat and exhaustion. But today promises to be particularly brutal as you awaken to the distinct feeling of hot, dry air even before dawn has fully broken. The experienced workers sense it too. "Red sky at morning," mutters an older man as you exit the sleeping quarters, his eyes fixed on the crimson-tinged horizon. "Sekhmet's breath will be upon us today." Others nod grimly at the reference to the lion-headed goddess of fire and destruction. The morning meal is consumed with less conversation than usual, as if everyone is conserving energy for what lies ahead. By the time you reach your workstation, the sun has cleared the horizon, enormous and orange-red, seeming closer and more malevolent than on ordinary days. The limestone beneath your feet, cooled during the earliest hours, already radiates warmth back at you. Veteran workers are preparing differently today. Some wrap additional linen strips around their heads. Others apply extra oils to exposed skin. A few carefully positioned amulets of Sekhmet or Tefnut for protection against the heat. An overseer passes through the ranks, his voice carrying unusual urgency. "More water has been allocated today. Use it wisely." This rare concession to the workers' physical needs underscores the severity of the conditions expected. Even the pharaoh's eternal monument must occasionally bend to accommodate the limitations of mortal flesh, if only to keep that flesh productive. By mid-morning, the promised heat has fully manifested. The sky has transformed into a vast, brassy dome, its usual blue deepened to an almost metallic hue. The sun seems to occupy half the heavens, a bloated, merciless eye glaring down at the scurrying figures below. The air itself has become a physical presence, pressing against your skin, entering your lungs as if through a furnace. The temperature in the quarry defies comprehension. Limestone, with its light color, would normally reflect some heat, but after days of sustained warmth, the stone has become a heat reservoir, releasing its stored energy back into the already scorching air. You work in a natural oven, the walls of the quarry preventing any breeze from providing even momentary relief. Sweat becomes your constant companion and greatest enemy. Your body produces it in extraordinary quantities, soaking your linen kilt, within the first hour of work. At first, this natural cooling system functions as intended, the evaporating moisture drawing heat from your skin. But as the day advances and dehydration sets in, your sweat production begins to falter. The droplets become smaller, less frequent, until your skin develops a frightening dryness despite your continued exertion. Water distribution becomes the most anticipated moment of each hour. Young boys still carry the large pottery vessels, but today they're accompanied by scribes who carefully note each worker's water consumption. The rational part of your mind understands this monitoring on days like today. Men have been known to consume far more than their share, leaving others without, but the primal part of your consciousness resents this careful measuring of what feels like the difference between life and death. Your allotted water disappears almost instantly, your body absorbing the moisture before it even reaches your stomach. The relief is cruelly temporary, your thirst returning within minutes, more intense than before. You watch the water carriers move away with something approaching desperation, knowing it will be a full hour before they return. The physical symptoms of heat exposure manifest in waves. First comes the headache, beginning as a dull pressure at your temples and gradually intensifying until each heartbeat sends a pulse of pain through your skull. Next, your vision occasionally blurs. The limestone before you swimming in and out of focus. Your hands begin to tremble slightly, making precise tool work increasingly difficult. Around you, others display more advanced symptoms. A man working nearby suddenly stops, his expression confused, mumbling incoherently as he stares at his tools as if seeing them for the first time. The fellow workers quickly move to his side, guiding him to a rare patch of shade cast by a large cup block. They pour some of their precious water over his head and neck, a sacrifice that might save his life, but will increase their own suffering. Another worker isn't so fortunate. He collapses suddenly, without warning, his body convulsing. Briefly before going terrifyingly still, the overseers react with practiced efficiency. Having seen this scenario many times before, the man is carried to a designated recovery area at the edge of the quarry, where he'll either revive or become another statistic in the monument's human cost. You learn new terminologies for the ways he claims his victims. Sunstruck describes those who collapse suddenly as a felled by his arrow. Desert fever refers to the delirious state that precedes more serious symptoms. Fire blood is the frightening condition, where a man stops sweating entirely, his skin becoming hot and dry as parchment before he loses consciousness. The workers have developed their own comprehensive understanding of heat illness. Through generations of bitter experience, the most insidious aspect of extreme heat is how it affects the mind. Concentration becomes nearly impossible, your thoughts fragmenting like pottery dropped on stone. You find yourself making simple mistakes, misplacing tools, forgetting basic instructions, losing count of routine repetitions. This mental fog is as dangerous as any physical symptom, leading to errors that can result in crushed limbs or worse. Veterans of previous red sky days share their survival strategies in terse, practical advice. Breathe through your nose, not your mouth, one tells you during a brief rest. Keeps more water in your body. Another demonstrates how to position your arms occasionally to allow air to reach your armpits and groin, where large blood vessels run close to the surface, cools the blood. He explains simply, some protective measures border on the ritualistic. You observe workers pressing small stones against specific points on their wrists or necks, locations believed to contain vital life forces that can be cooled to affect the entire body. Others whisper prayers to Shu, god of air and coolness, his name repeated with increasing desperation as the day advances. By midday, the full ferocity of the Egyptian sun reveals itself. The horizon shimmers with heat haze, distorting distant objects into wavering mirages. The smell of hot stone dominates everything, a dry, mineral scent that seems to sear the inside of your nostrils. The quarry has become a vision of the duat that even the priests might find convincing, a realm of punishment, where souls labor eternally under merciless heat. The normal midday meal break is extended slightly today, a rare concession to the extreme conditions. You find whatever meager shade is available, joining other workers pressed against the minimal shadow cast by a large uncut section of limestone. The bread you receive seems to draw moisture from your mouth rather than providing any, and you struggle to swallow without water to accompany it. An older worker sitting nearby notices your difficulty and offers advice that initially sounds counterintuitive. Take salt if they offer it, he says, nodding toward the overseers distributing small amounts of the precious mineral. keeps the water in your body longer. The practice, developed through generations of desert survival, reflects an understanding of bodily needs that predates any formal medical knowledge. As the break ends and work resumes, you notice how the overseers have adjusted expectations for the day. The quota of stones to be cut has been reduced, not out of compassion, but practicality. Experience has shown that pushing workers to maintain normal productivity in extreme heat results in more collapsed bodies than completed blocks. Even in the pharaoh's divine building project, certain natural laws cannot be ignored. The afternoon brings a new dimension of suffering. Having already endured hours of intense heat, your body's reserves are depleted. Every movement requires conscious effort. Every task takes longer to complete. The quarry becomes eerily quiet as workers conserve energy by eliminating all unnecessary communication. The usual rhythmic sounds of construction continue, but the shouts, conversations, and occasional laughter that normally punctuate the work have disappeared. Your skin has developed an alarming sensitivity, feeling simultaneously burnt and chilled despite the heat. Touching the stone sends jolts of pain through your fingertips. The constant dust, mixed with sweat, has created an abrasive paste that chafes between joints and in the creases of your body. Each movement brings awareness of new discomforts, new vulnerabilities. Time distortion becomes profound. You find yourself staring at a half-completed cut in the stone, unable to remember whether you've been working on it for minutes or hours. The sun seems frozen in the sky, suspended at its zenith in defiance of natural order. You begin to understand why some collapsed workers babble about Ra being angry, about time itself being broken as punishment for some unknown transgression. The water carriers make their rounds with increasing frequency as the afternoon progresses, but the portions remain strictly controlled. You notice how the overseers themselves, despite their elevated status, show signs of heat strain there. Movements slower, their commands less forceful, their vigilance slightly diminished. Only the youngest workers, mostly teenage boys assigned to lighter tasks, seem to maintain something resembling normal energy. Around mid-afternoon, a distant sound captures everyone's attention. A low, continuous rumble from the south. Eyes turn toward the horizon, where an ominous wall of darkness is visible against the brassy sky. A Khamsin is approaching one of the hot, sand-laden desert winds that periodically sweep across Egypt. The overseer's whistle cuts through the heavy air, signaling an immediate cessation of work. There's no time to properly secure tools or materials. The approaching sandstorm represents a danger that outweighs even the pharaoh's schedule. Workers move with surprising speed toward the nearest shelters-covered areas constructed precisely for this common occurrence. You follow the crowd, half running, half stumbling toward a long, low structure built against the quarry wall. The Khamsin arrives with frightening suddenness. One moment the air is still and scorching. The next, a howling wind drives millions of sand particles against every exposed surface. The sound is overwhelming, a constant roar punctuated by the higher-pitched whistling of wind finding its way through every crack and opening. Even inside the shelter, fine sand penetrates, coating your already parched throat and stinging your eyes. Pressed together in the cramped space, bodies that have been laboring in isolation all day suddenly find themselves in intimate proximity. The shared experience of the storm creates a momentary sense of community, transcending the usual divisions of skill level and origin. Conversation remains minimal, but there's a palpable sense of collective endurance, of witnessing together another of Egypt's harsh extremes. An older worker, his face deeply lined from decades under the sun, speaks quietly to no one in particular. Sekhmet and Set are babbling. He says, referring to the deities of fire and chaos, "We are fortunate to be forgotten by them for a while." Others nod, in agreement, finding comfort in the traditional explanation for the natural phenomenon raging outside. The sandstorm lasts perhaps an hour, though it's difficult to judge time in the dim shelter. When it finally subsides, workers emerge cautiously to find a transformed landscape. A fine layer of sand covers everything: tools, cut stones, partially completed blocks. The air, however, has changed. Though still hot, the worst of the days, extreme heat is broken, replaced by a dry, sand-laden warmth that, after what came before, almost feels tolerable. The remainder of the workday is spent largely in recovery operations, clearing sand, relocating tools, assessing any damage caused by the sudden storm. It's exhausting work, but different muscles are engaged, providing some relief to those strained by the morning's stone cutting. The overseers maintain a watchful but less demanding presence, aware that the day has already extracted its toll from the workers' bodies. As the sun finally begins its descent toward the western horizon, its character changes. The harsh white glare softens to gold, then copper, then a deep red that mirrors the dawn's warning. Long shadows stretch across the quarry, creating pools of relative coolness that workers gravitate toward like dying men to an oasis. The day's ordeal is ending, though its effects will linger in sunburned skin, dehydrated bodies, and the collective memory of those who endured it. The walk back to the workers' village takes on a dreamlike quality. Your body moves forward through sheer habit while your mind floats disconnected, too exhausted to maintain normal awareness. Around you, others move with the same automatic gait, their expressions vacant, focusing only on placing one foot before the next. Occasionally someone stumbles, is caught by those nearby, and continues without acknowledgement of wordless cooperation born of shared suffering. Upon reaching the village, your first priority is water, not the carefully measured sips, allowed during work, but deep, satisfying drafts from the community wells. You join the line of workers waiting their turn, watching as each man ahead of you drinks with an intensity that borders on religious devotion. When your turn comes, the sensation of cool water flowing down your parched throat brings a pleasure so acute it's almost painful. The evening meal, usually consumed with some degree of social interaction, tonight becomes a silent, mechanical process of refueling depleted bodies. Workers eat methodically, focused entirely on the fundamental task of sustenance. Some of the weakest, those most affected by the day's heat, need assistance from others, their hands too shaky to reliably bring food to their mouths. As darkness falls, an unusual quiet settles over the workers' village. The normal evening activities, games of Senate, storytelling, small craft work by firelight are absent. Bodies demand rest with an urgency that overrides all social needs. You find your sleeping mat, your muscles protesting each movement, your sunburned skin flaring with pain as it contacts the reed surface. Despite your overwhelming exhaustion, sleep proves elusive. Your skin continues to radiate heat like the limestone. After sunset, your head throbs with the lingering headache that has been your companion since midday. Most disturbing is the continued sensation of movement. Your body, having spent the day in repetitive labor, recreates those motions even at rest. Your arms twitching with phantom work. Around you in the darkness, other workers experience similar discomforts. The sleeping chamber is filled with the sounds of restless bodies, groans as sunburned shoulders press against the floor, the scratch of fingers against irritated skin, the occasional whimper as someone's muscles cramp painfully. Sleep, when it finally comes, is shallow and frequently interrupted. Your dreams, when they come, are vivid and disjointed, filled with images of heat and thirst. You see the sun growing until it fills the entire sky. You feel limestone melting beneath your feet. You reach repeatedly for water that evaporates before touching your lips. Throughout these fragmented visions, the awareness persists that tomorrow may bring another red sky morning, another day under the scorching sun that feels less like a life-giving deity and more like an enemy determined to extract the maximum toll for your participation in the pharaoh's grand ambition. Yet even in exhausted semi-consciousness, something else takes shape in your mind, a growing resilience, a recalibration of what your body can endure. Today's suffering becomes tomorrow's baseline, your capacity for withstanding extreme conditions expanding through necessity. The human form, so fragile in many ways, demonstrates its remarkable adaptability, finding ways to function in environments seemingly designed to destroy it. And somewhere in the space between waking and sleeping, you realize that this capacity for adaptation carries its own danger, the risk of accepting as normal conditions that should never be normalized, of seeing as inevitable suffering that is ultimately a choice made by those with power over those without. The monument rising in the distance, its white limestone gleaming under the moon, testifies not just to the pharaoh's ambition, but to the extraordinary things humans will endure when given no alternative. As consciousness finally fades completely, your last coherent thought is a simple calculation: one more day endured, countless more awaiting. The sun will rise again tomorrow, indifferent to your suffering, and you will rise with it. Because in this place, at this time, that is what survival demands, and survival, even under the scorching sun, remains the most fundamental human imperative of all. Dawn arrives with merciful coolness, the night's respite from yesterday's extreme heat, allowing your body some minimal recovery. As you join the flow of workers moving toward the construction site, Conversations around you have shifted from personal discomfort to the day's anticipated challenges. Today, your gang has been reassigned from the quarry to the main pyramid construction, a mixed blessing that spares you from stone cutting, but introduces you to entirely new forms of labor and danger. The scale of the engineering undertaking becomes increasingly apparent as you approach the construction site proper. What appeared impressive from a distance now reveals itself as truly monumental up close. The base of the pyramid stretches out before you, a perfect square with sides aligned precisely to the cardinal directions, each measuring over 230 cubits, approximately 120 meters. The precision is astonishing. The margin of error in this massive foundation is less than a finger's width across its entire span. As you're integrated into your new work team, the strict hierarchy among the construction workers becomes immediately clear. At the top stand the master builders and architects, men with the mathematical knowledge and spatial understanding to transform conceptual plans into physical reality. They are rarely seen by common laborers, spending their time in consultation with high priests and royal officials, their calculations and drawings protected as closely as religious texts. Below them are the overseers of specific construction aspects, men responsible for ensuring that individual sections meet the exacting standards required for the whole structure. To achieve its intended perfection, these men carry measuring cords and leveling tools, constantly checking and rechecking alignments with a precision that seems almost obsessive to the untrained eye. Next come the skilled craftsmen, the stone masons who can transform rough cut blocks into perfectly fitted pieces, the carpenters who construct the wooden sledges and levers essential to moving massive stones, and the specialists who understand the principles of ramps and counterweights. These men possess knowledge transferred through generations, often from father to son, creating family lineages of specialized expertise. Only after all these levels do you find workers like yourself, the essential muscle that powers the entire operation, responsible for the brute force aspects of construction. Yet even within this category, subtle distinctions exist. Those with experience in moving and placing stones hold slightly higher status than complete newcomers. Those who've demonstrated reliability might be assigned to more critical, though equally demanding tasks. Your gang's assignment today focuses on one of the most fundamental engineering challenges of pyramid construction, moving multi-ton limestone blocks from ground level up the steadily increasing height of the structure. The solution Egyptian builders have developed is both elegant and brutally demanding on human bodies, a system of ramps that spiral around the growing pyramid, allowing teams of workers to drag massive stones upward on wooden sledges. The team leader, a heavyset man with forearms like tree trunks, explains your role with minimal preamble. 20 men to a stone, shoulders to the ropes. Move only on the signal. Stop instantly when commanded. Hesitation kills. The simplicity of these instructions belies the complexity of the task and the coordination required to execute it safely. The stone blocks awaiting transport are significantly larger than those you handled in the quarry, each weighing between 2 and 3 tons. They rest on wooden sledges, their surfaces already dressed by masons to ensure proper fitting. Thick ropes of twisted papyrus fiber are attached to each sledge, providing the means by which your team will apply force. Before the hauling begins, you observe specialists preparing the ramp surface, a critical task that directly impacts how much effort will be required to move each block. Workers spread a mixture of wet clay and gypsum ahead of the sledge, creating a slick surface that reduces friction. Others position rounded wooden rollers at strategic points, ready to place them under the sledge at specific intervals. These seemingly small considerations represent generations of accumulated knowledge about reducing the immense force required to overcome inertia and gravity. Taking your position among the 20 men assigned to your block, you grip the thick rope, noticing how the experienced haulers wrap it in a specific way around their shoulders to distribute the load more evenly across their bodies. You mimic their technique as best you can, understanding that proper form might be the difference between completing the day's work intact or suffering disabling injury. The team leader's command comes sharp and clear. Brace. You and your fellow haulers lean backward, taking up the slack in the rope, feeling the immense weight of the stone transmitted through the fiber into your body. Pull. The command triggers a synchronized effort as 20 men apply their full strength in coordinated motion. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happens, the stone seeming to defy your combined strength. Then, almost imperceptibly, movement begins. The engineering principles at work are fundamental, but effective. The wet clay reduces friction, Between sledge and ramp, the slight forward motion allows rollers to be positioned under the leading edge of the sledge, transforming sliding friction into the much lower rolling friction. The incline of the ramp is carefully calculated to balance the need to gain height with the limitations of human hauling capacity. None of these considerations eases the burning in your shoulders and back, but they make the impossible, merely excruciating. Progress up the ramp occurs in short, intense bursts of effort, followed by brief periods of rest while the sledge is secured with wooden blocks to prevent backsliding. During these pauses, specialists adjust the rollers and reapply the wet clay mixture ahead of your path. The coordination between different worker types must be perfect. A misplaced roller or inadequately prepared surface can cause catastrophic failure, sending tons of limestone sliding backward into fragile human bodies. As you ascend higher, new challenges emerge. The ramp narrows in sections, requiring more precise movement. Crosswinds become noticeable, creating additional lateral forces that must be countered by the haulers. The psychological effect of increasing height adds its own dimension, the growing distance to the ground below, creating an awareness of consequence should something go wrong. The true engineering marvel becomes apparent at turning points in the spiral ramp. Here, the massive stone must change direction, a maneuver that can't be accomplished by simply pulling differently. At these junctures, you encounter specialized turning platforms where the stone is pivoted using a combination of levers, pivot points, and carefully coordinated human effort. Watching the process, you gain new appreciation for the knowledge embedded in this construction system. Solutions refined through centuries of monumental building projects. Halfway up the ascending ramp, disaster nearly strikes. A wooden roller splits unexpectedly under the weight of the stone, causing the sledge to lurch sideways. The team leader's command comes instantly: brace, hold. Every man strains against the rope as specialists rush to secure the stone with wooden blocks. Before it can build momentum, the workers narrowly avoid being crushed as the sledge slides several handspans before being secured. The incident passes in seconds, but leaves a lingering awareness of how quickly death can come on the construction site. The broken roller is replaced, the stone realigned, and the journey continues after a brief but intense conference between the team leader and a structural overseer. You notice how they examine not just the roller itself, but the section of ramp where the failure occurred, looking for underlying issues that might cause subsequent problems. The attention to detail, even amid urgent pressure to maintain construction pace, reflects a sophisticated understanding that small failures can cascade into catastrophic ones if not properly addressed. As your team approaches the current top level of the pyramid where the stone will be placed, you encounter another engineering challenge unique to this type of construction. The block must transition from the sloped ramp to the horizontal surface where it will rest permanently. This juncture represents a critical vulnerability, where gravity and momentum must be perfectly controlled. Here, a different system takes over. The hauling ropes are fed through a series of wooden pulleys attached to a sturdy frame, creating a rudimentary but effective mechanical advantage. System: teams of workers on the level surface take up the ropes, working in coordination with your hauling team to ensure the stone moves smoothly onto the horizontal plane without gathering dangerous momentum down the slope. The final positioning of the block requires yet another set of specialized skills. Masons direct the precise placement, using copper levers and wooden wedges to make minute adjustments. The block must fit together with its neighbors with remarkable precision. Gaps of more than a finger's width are unacceptable. Workers apply a thin layer of mortar to help secure the stone and fill tiny imperfections. But the primary stability comes from the perfect fitting of massive blocks against one another. With your first stone successfully placed, you gain a moment to observe the broader construction activity around you. The pyramid rises through a complex choreography of simultaneous activities. On the opposite side, another ramp spirals upward, allowing materials to move continuously without creating bottlenecks. At various levels, different types of work proceed concurrently, coarse stones being placed in one section, while specialized casing stones are fitted in another. The entire process depends on precise communication and timing. You notice a system of signal flags being used to coordinate activities between ground level and higher elevations. Runners carry messages between different work zones when more complex information needs transmission. The logistical challenge of keeping thousands of workers productively engaged without creating dangerous congestion represents an organizational achievement as impressive as the physical structure itself. The day continues with your team returning down the ramp to retrieve another massive block. The descent offers a different perspective on the construction site, revealing the full scope of the project. In the distance, you can see the causeway where finished casing stones the fine white limestone that will eventually cover the entire structure arrive by boat during the Nile's annual flood. Closer to the pyramid base, craftsmen work in open-air workshops, carving these precision outer stones that will give the completed monument its smooth, reflective surface. Your second ascent of the day feels even more demanding than the first. Your muscles already fatigued from the morning's exertion, but the team functions more smoothly now, having established a rhythm and understanding of one another's strengths and tendencies. The stone moves with greater coordination, requiring fewer corrections and adjustments. During a brief rest period, while specialists prepare a particularly challenging section of ramp, an older worker quietly explains some of the engineering principles that make the seemingly impossible task feasible. The ramp never exceeds 1 cubit of rise for every 10 cubits of run, he explains, using the construction terminology for slope gradient. Any steeper and no amount of men could move these stones upward. He points out other subtle features of the construction system, how the ramp width is precisely calculated to allow counterflow of workers and materials, how specific sections are reinforced where stress concentrates, how the spiral design minimizes the total ramp length needed while maintaining a workable grade. His explanation reveals how thoroughly the Egyptians have analyzed and optimized each aspect of the construction process, applying practical solutions to theoretical problems. The conversation shifts to the various theories about how the highest portions of the pyramid will be completed. Once the structure rises beyond the practical height for external ramps, the worker outlines several possibilities. Internal ramps that spiral upward inside the structure itself, progressively dismantled external ramps, or levering systems that might be used for the final highest stones. The fact that multiple approaches exist, each with their advocates among the master builders, underscores that even within this highly developed construction system, some aspects remain open to innovation and adaptation. Late in the afternoon, as your team struggles with a particularly stubborn block near another turning platform, you witness one of the most impressive demonstrations of Egyptian engineering knowledge. The stone has shifted awkwardly on its sledge, creating a dangerous imbalance that threatens to send it tumbling sideways off the ramp. Work halts immediately as several high-ranking overseers converge on the problem. After a brief but intense discussion, they implement a solution that demonstrates sophisticated understanding of leverage and counterweight principles. Workers quickly construct a temporary wooden frame alongside the trebled stone. Ropes are attached to specific points on the sledge, then fed through the frame to create a pulley system. Counterweight smaller stones in woven baskets are attached to the opposite ends of the ropes. With this apparatus in place, precise tension can be applied to specific points on the unbalanced stone, gradually shifting it back into proper position without requiring dangerous direct manipulation of the massive block. The elegant solution reveals how Egyptian builders have developed systems to address even unexpected problems with minimal risk to human life, though that risk is never fully eliminated. As the workday finally draws to a close and your team makes its final descent from the construction level, the setting sun casts long shadows across the partially completed monument. The geometric perfection of what has already been built stands in sharp contrast to the seemingly chaotic activity of construction. Yet that chaos is more apparent than real. Beneath the surface lies a complex, integrated system where each component serves a specific purpose in service to the greater whole. In the fading light, you notice a small group of figures at the base of the pyramid, priests performing evening rituals to ensure the gods' continued blessing of the construction. Their chanted prayers mingle with the creaking of wooden equipment being secured for the night, and the conversations of workers comparing the day's experiences. The juxtaposition captures the dual nature of the entire project simultaneously: a practical, physical undertaking and a deeply spiritual endeavor. The return to the workers' village brings conversation centered on the engineering challenges encountered during the day. You listen as more experienced workers debate the relative merits of different ramp designs, argue about optimal rope materials, or discuss how the internal chambers of the pyramid spaces you've yet to see are being constructed with even more exacting standards than the outer structure. These discussions reveal something surprising: a sense of technical pride among many workers, regardless of their position in the hierarchy. From master builders to simple haulers like yourself, There's a shared appreciation for the achievement taking shape through your collective effort. Despite the physical toll, despite the compulsory nature of the labor, participants at all levels find meaning in contributing to something of unprecedented scale and ambition. As darkness settles over the workers' village, your exhausted body seeks rest. Your mind remains active, processing the day's lessons in practical physics and engineering. The pyramid rising in the distance represents more than just the pharaoh's ambition or religious devotion. It embodies the accumulated knowledge of generations of Egyptian builders, their understanding of materials, forces, and the capacities of human bodies working in coordination. Tomorrow will bring new challenges as the construction continues its relentless progress upward. The engineering problems will evolve as the structure grows higher, requiring new solutions and adaptations. Your role in this grand project may be among the humblest, yet you're participating in one of humanity's most significant technical achievements, a monument that will endure for millennia after the aches in your muscles have been forgotten, and as sleep finally overtakes you. One realization lingers: the contrast between the sophisticated engineering knowledge demonstrated in the construction process and the brutal simplicity of how that knowledge is implemented through human muscle and bone. The perfect mathematical form rising in the desert requires imperfect, vulnerable bodies to bring it into existence, a paradox at the heart of the entire monumental enterprise. The first rays of sunrise filter through the gaps in the workers' quarters, illuminating dancing dust particles in golden beams. Your body protests at the prospect of another day of labor, muscles stiff and joints reluctant to move after yesterday's hauling work. But all around you, others are rising despite similar discomfort, their movements automatic after weeks or months of the same routine. In this harsh environment, one truth has become increasingly clear: no one survives pyramid building alone. As you prepare for the day ahead, you observe the complex web of social relationships that has developed among the workforce. What began as a random collection of conscripted men from villages throughout Egypt has evolved into a distinct society, with its own hierarchies, alliances, and unwritten rules. These social bonds are not merely pleasant additions to daily life. They represent the difference between survival and breakdown, both physical and mental. Your immediate circle consists primarily of men from your home region, fellow villagers, and farmers from neighboring settlements along the same stretch of the Nile. The shared dialect, familiar religious practices, and common references to places and people create an instant foundation for trust. These natural groupings formed spontaneously in the early days, as men sought the comfort of the familiar amid overwhelming strangeness. But as the weeks have passed, these regional circles have begun to blur and overlap. New bonds form based on work assignments, shared hardships, and complementary skills or personalities. Your hauling team from yesterday now feels connected by the shared experience of moving those massive stones up the ramp, a specific type of struggle that creates its own unique camaraderie. The morning meal provides the first significant social interaction of the day. You join a group that has come to eat together regularly, a mix of men from your village and others you've met through work assignments. The configuration isn't random. Each person brings something valuable to this small alliance. An older worker from the Delta region possesses extensive knowledge of healing herbs and practices, making him worth protecting and supporting. A stocky man from Upper Egypt has connections with the food distribution workers, occasionally securing extra rations. A quiet youth from your own village has revealed surprising talent at tool repair, extending the life of precious copper implements. Conversation flows around practical matters: which overseers to avoid today, which work areas are most dangerous, which healers have the most effective treatments for specific injuries. Information is perhaps the most valuable currency in the workers' community, and these breakfast gatherings serve as exchanges where crucial knowledge is shared and refined. The West Ramp crew lost 2 men yesterday, reports a worker who helps transport the injured back to the village. Block slipped during a turn, crushed their legs. The news is absorbed soberly, prompting a detailed discussion of the specific turning mechanism on that ramp and how to position oneself safely around it. No one expresses surprise or excessive horror at the incident. Such accidents are commonplace enough to merit practical analysis rather than emotional reaction. As you prepare to depart for the day's assignment, you observe the various forms of social organization that have emerged within the workforce. Most visible are the landsman groups, men from the same home regions, who protect each other's interests, share resources, and provide mutual aid. These natural alliances sometimes develop into more formal structures, with recognized leaders who negotiate with overseers or mediate internal conflicts. Equally important are the occupational brotherhoods that transcend regional origins. Stone masons from different parts of Egypt find common ground in their shared craft, developing distinctive traditions and specialized language. Even among the unskilled laborers, those who regularly perform specific tasks, haulers, water carriers, mortar mixers develop group identities and particular ways of approaching their work. Today your assignment takes you to a different area of the construction and internal corridor being created within the pyramid's mass. The closed space and different technical challenges will test not only your physical capabilities, but your ability to function as part of a coordinated team. The entrance to the corridor is a square opening in the northern face of the pyramid, currently covered by temporary wooden doors. Inside, the passageway descends at a precise angle, its walls formed by massive limestone blocks fitted with remarkable precision. The space is illuminated by oil lamps placed in niches, their flickering light creating shifting shadows that amplify the confined sensation. Your team consists of 12 men, selected for your relatively smaller built-in advantage in the tight space where you'll be working. The overseer, a surprisingly soft-spoken man compared to the shouting taskmasters in the open construction areas, explains your task. You'll be moving smaller, but still substantial blocks along the corridor to seal a recently completed chamber. Inside, you breathe each other's air. He says simply, you sweat together, bleed together. Outside quarrels stay outside. Inside, you are one body with many arms. His words aren't poetic flourish, but practical instruction in confined spaces. Cooperation isn't merely beneficial, but essential for survival. The work begins, and immediately you understand the overseer's emphasis on coordination. The corridor is barely wide enough for men to stand abreast, with a ceiling so low that taller workers must stoop constantly. Moving blocks in this environment requires perfect synchronization. Each person must lift, step, and place their burden in harmony with the others or risk causing a collision that could result in crushed fingers or worse. Communication takes on heightened importance in the enclosed space. Unlike the open construction areas where shouted commands can carry across distances, here information must travel through the line of workers via brief, clear signals, a vocabulary of short words, and sounds develop spontaneously, specific utterances to indicate readiness, warnings about obstacles, requests for pauses. Within hours, your team has created its own miniature language adapted to the unique acoustic and spatial constraints of the corridor. The physical proximity forces a different kind of social relationship than exists above ground. You become acutely aware of each teammate's breathing patterns, natural rhythm of movement, and physical limitations. One worker's shoulder injury means he slightly favors his left side when lifting. You automatically adjust your own position to compensate. Another has a persistent cough from years of quarry dust. The team instinctively provides him slightly longer rest periods, without needing to discuss it. Mid-morning brings the first significant challenge to the team's cohesion. The corridor narrows further at a junction, requiring a change in how the blocks are handled and passed. The workers disagree on the best approach. A stocky man from the Delta advocates a technique using rollers, while a worker from your region insists on a pure lifting method. The dispute escalates quickly, voices rising dangerously in the confined space. Before the overseer can intervene, an older worker steps between them. He's a quiet man who rarely speaks, but something in his demeanor, perhaps the extensive scarring on his arms and chest from previous construction injuries, commands immediate respect. Try both ways, he says simply, one block each way, then decide. The practical solution diffuses the tension immediately. Both methods are tested, and the roller technique proves slightly more efficient. The matter is settled without anyone losing face, a critical consideration in a culture where personal honor and reputation are treasured possessions, even among the humblest workers. This incident illuminates another crucial aspect of social relationships. Among the workforce, the emergence of natural leaders, distinct from the officially appointed overseers. These individuals gain authority not through royal appointment or noble birth, but through demonstrated wisdom, exceptional skill, or the respect earned through years of survival in brutal conditions. Their influence often extends beyond their official position in the hierarchy, creating a parallel social structure that workers navigate alongside the formal chains of command. As the morning progresses into afternoon, the temperature in the corridor rises dramatically. The enclosed space traps body heat and lamp smoke, creating an atmosphere that grows increasingly oppressive. Sweat pours freely, making tools and stone surfaces treacherously slippery. Communication becomes more minimal as each man conserves energy and oxygen. In these conditions, you witness how quickly social bonds can mean the difference between life and death. A young worker, new to the construction site, begins showing signs of distress. His breathing becomes irregular, his movements uncoordinated. Before he can collapse, the teammates position themselves on either side, supporting his weight while signaling for a pause in the work. They guide him toward the entrance where fresher air circulates, potentially saving him from suffocation or heat stroke. No one comments on the incident when work resumes. The protection of weaker members happens without discussion or recognition, not from particular compassion, but from the practical understanding that anyone might need similar help tomorrow. The reciprocal nature of these protective actions forms an unspoken insurance system where aid given today might be received tomorrow. The midday meal break offers temporary escape from the carter's confines. Workers emerge blinking into the harsh sunlight, bodies coated with white limestone dust that turns gray-brown. Where it mixes with sweat, the contrast between the dark, enclosed morning work and the open, bright expanse of the construction site creates a momentary disorientation. Meal groups reorganize differently than at breakfast, reflecting the day's work assignments rather than more permanent affiliations. You find yourself sharing food with your corridor teammates, the morning's shared hardship creating a temporary bond. Conversation remains practical, but includes more personal elements, brief references to families left behind, fragments of lives that existed before pyramid building consumed everything. My oldest son would be starting to help in the fields this season, comments a man from a village near your own, staring at the calluses on his hands. His mother will manage, but he doesn't complete the thought, doesn't need to. Everyone understands the complex emotions concerned for families struggling without male labor, grief at missing childhood milestones, guilt at being absent despite the involuntary nature of that absence. The afternoon assignment takes you to yet another work environment with its own social dynamics, one of the massive ramps, where stones are dragged upward on sledges. Here, the work groups are much larger, with teams of 40 or more men harnessed to single blocks. The scale requires more formal organization, with designated leaders calling cadence and specialized workers managing the ropes and rollers. This setting reveals another dimension of workforce relationships, the competitive aspect that exists alongside cooperation. Different hauling teams develop distinct identities, taking pride in their efficiency and strength compared to others. Friendly taunts are exchanged between groups. Southern boys pull like they're dragging feathers. Delta men need twice the numbers for half the work. This competition might seem counterproductive in such physically demanding circumstances, but you soon recognize its practical value. The teasing and challenges provide psychological motivation, transforming repetitive, exhausting labor into a contest where pride and reputation are at stake. Men push themselves harder for the collective honor of their team than they would for abstract concepts like duty to the pharaoh or religious significance. As the afternoon progresses, you observe how information spreads through the workforce via sophisticated social networks. News of a collapsed section on the eastern side reaches your western ramp within hours, along with detailed specifics about what failed and why. Warnings about a particularly harsh new overseer travel even faster, complete with advice on how to avoid his attention. These communication channels operate independently in the official hierarchy, creating a parallel information system that helps workers navigate dangers and opportunities. Perhaps the most striking social phenomenon emerges as the workday approaches its end. Despite the extreme fatigue, despite competing regional identities and the friction of thousands of men living in crowded conditions, moments of genuine community materialize in unexpected ways. A worker slips on the ramp and a dozen hands reach out to steady him regardless of team affiliation. A water carrier arrives with the day's final ration, and those at the front of the line ensure portions reach those too exhausted to push forward. These are not acts of exceptional altruism, but pragmatic adaptations to shared circumstance. In the harshest conditions, humans instinctively recognize that collective survival requires certain social contracts. Today's beneficiary becomes tomorrow's benefactor in an endless cycle of mutual aid that transcends individual self-interest. The return to the workers' village at day's end reveals yet another layer of social organization. As the formal work structure dissolves, people gravitate to various evening activities that strengthen different types of bonds. Some join regional groups where stories and news from home are shared, maintaining connections to places and people left behind. Others seek out occupational circles where specialized knowledge is exchanged, improving skills that might lead to better positions or reduce physical strain. Small economies flourish in these evening hours. Men with particular talents sandal repair, haircuts, amulet carving, massage techniques for specific injuries offer their services in exchange for portions of food, rations, or other favors. These transactions create additional relationship networks distinct from daytime work groups or regional affiliations. Religious practices provide another framework for social cohesion. Small groups gather to perform abbreviated versions of home village rituals, maintaining spiritual connections alongside physical ones. Others join in broader worship of deities, particularly relevant to construction. The craftsman god, Horus the protector, Hathor the nurturer of injured bodies. These shared spiritual experiences transcend regional differences, creating communities united by belief rather than origin. Entertainment emerges even in these harsh circumstances. Talented storytellers draw crowds with tales of ancient kings and mythical heroes. Musicians with improvised instruments, drums made from empty water jars, flutes carved from river reeds create simple melodies that temporarily transport listeners away from physical discomfort. These cultural activities aren't merely diversions, but crucial maintenance of humanity in dehumanizing conditions. As darkness falls completely, the day's final social configurations form around small fires where the last meal is prepared and consumed. These nighttime groupings often represent the most intimate circles. Men who have developed deep trust through shared experience, who watch over each other's few possessions, who wake each other if nightmares come, who listen when grief or despair becomes too heavy to bear alone. You find yourself in such a circle, sharing a fire with a mix of men from your village and others met through work assignments. The conversation flows more freely than during daylight hours, touching on families, memories of festivals and harvests, occasional jokes that bring welcome laughter. In this small pocket of warmth amid the vast, impersonal construction enterprise, basic human connection reasserts itself. An older worker, his body mapped with scars from years on construction sites, speaks quietly about survival. "I've seen men stronger than any of us break within weeks," he says, poking at the small fire. Not from the work itself, but from trying to carry everything alone. He looks around the circle. The stones crush those who stand apart. His simple observation captures the essential truth you've been learning through experience: that social relationships aren't secondary to physical strength or technical skill, but primary determinants of survival. The bonds formed between workers function as critical infrastructure, just as essential as the ramps and levers that raise the physical structure. As exhaustion finally overcomes conversation and the fire burns down to embers, you settle onto your sleeping mat with a deeper understanding of your circumstances. The pyramid rising nearby remains an oppressive presence, demanding your labor and indifferent to your suffering. But within that harsh reality, a parallel structure exists: a complex social architecture of mutual support, information exchange, and shared identity that makes the unbearable somehow bearable. Tomorrow will bring another cycle of brutal labor, another test of physical endurance. But you'll face it not as an isolated individual, but as part of multiple overlapping communities: your regional group, your work team, your evening circle, each providing different forms of support essential to survival. The pharaoh's monument may be built of limestone and granite, but the workforce that creates it is held together by something both more fragile and more resilient: the human capacity for cooperation and connection even in the most dehumanizing circumstances. And as sleep finally claims you, one realization persists: while the pyramid will indeed stand for eternity, as its designers intended, perhaps the most remarkable achievement is not the monument itself, but the invisible social structures that made its creation possible. Thousands of individual humans, each with their own fears and hopes and limitations, somehow functioning together as a unified creative force. This accomplishment, though never recorded in hieroglyphics or celebrated in temple carvings, may be the most profound legacy of the entire monumental enterprise. As night falls on the workers' village, your journey through the brutal reality of pyramid building nears its conclusion. The remaining chapters of your story unfold with both suffering and surprising moments of meaning. During nightfall in the workers' camp, you discover the small comforts that make survival possible: the shared stories around den fires, the healing rituals performed by village elders, and the brief moments of rest that never quite ease the pain in your broken body. Sleep becomes precious currency. Though nightmares of falling stones and collapsed ramps frequently interrupt what little you get, the religious life of workers reveals a complex relationship with Egypt's gods. While building a monument to the pharaoh's divine journey, workers develop their own spiritual practices, praying to Ptah for protection during construction, leaving tiny offerings at small shrines near work sites, and performing simplified burial rituals for fallen comrades. Death becomes a constant companion, with simple graves multiplying at the edge of the workers' village. The contrast between elaborate preparations for the pharaoh's afterlife and the basic interment of workers creates a stark reminder of Egypt's unyielding social hierarchy. Seasonal challenges transform the construction experience throughout the year. The inundation season brings relative relief, as many return temporarily to villages for agricultural work, while those remaining enjoy slightly reduced quotas, and the psychological boost of occasional visits from family members bringing news and small comforts from home. Winter brings its own difficulties with cold desert nights and reduced daylight hours, while the dry season's heat and sandstorms create the most dangerous working conditions of all. The psychological burden proves as crippling as the physical toll. Separation from family, the seeming endlessness of the project, and the constant proximity to death create a unique form of suffering. Workers develop various coping mechanisms, focusing only on the day's work rather than the project's scale, creating mental maps of time until potential release, and finding small moments of meaning in perfecting even humble tasks. Some find purpose in the monument's permanence, taking quiet pride in contributing to something that will outlast not just their lives, but countless generations to come. As years pass, your body becomes permanently transformed, shoulders misshapen from hauling, spine curved from lifting, lungs scarred from stone dust, skin weathered beyond your true age. Yet archaeological evidence suggests something remarkable about these workers. Despite their hardships, they received better nutrition than typical Egyptian peasants, had access to medical care, and were buried with small honors, suggesting they weren't viewed as mere slaves, but as participants in a sacred project. When your service finally ends, whether through completion of your conscription period, debilitating injury, or death, your legacy becomes part of the monument itself. Modern excavations of workers' villages and cemeteries have revealed the human story behind these superhuman structures, not the labor of countless slaves, driven by whips as popular imagination suggests, but the organized effort of Egyptian citizens who, despite brutal conditions, maintained their humanity and even found moments of meaning amid tremendous suffering. The pyramid's perfect geometrical form, reaching toward the heavens with mathematical precision, stands in stark contrast to the imperfect, fragile human bodies that created it. Yet this paradox contains the true wonder of these ancient monuments, that something so precise, so eternal, and so transcendent could emerge from the brief, painful lives of ordinary men who knew they would never enjoy the immortality they were building for another. As the great monument recedes in the distance, when you finally return to your village, forever changed by your experience, you carry with you not just the physical marks of your labor, but a complex understanding of what humans can endure, create, and overcome when their effort becomes part of something larger than themselves, even when that something is as coldly indifferent to their individual suffering as the massive stone structure now gleaming white against the desert sky, waiting for eternity.